Well, election night, you know, it's always a stressful event.
Because today you're almost running on empty, but you're running on adrenaline. Still, the air is full of tension around you.
On the campaign trail, it's a strange emotion of ups and downs, like a roller coaster.
I'm always nervous at this time. Nothing's taken for granted. The reason why I first got involved was back in 1978, 79, that sort of time. West Glamorgan County Council then were thinking of closing youth clubs. Now, as somebody who had been brought up within the youth club, I met my wife at a youth club, doing Duke of Edinburgh. I thought this can't be beyond, you know. Shouting and bawling one particular night at the television, and my wife said, "Look, don't do that. Go and join the ward." So I'd always my preference in politics has always been the Labour Party and left-wing politics. So I went along to the ward and joined the Labour Party then. And a couple of years later, in 1980, I had the opportunity to stand for the West Glamorgan County Council. I was nominated within the ward, and the ward supported me, and I stood against somebody else then for the nomination and won quite handsomely. And people looked at me then, I was 33 years of age at the time, and they thought, you know, a young man making his way in the world. And I just wanted, my feeling was that I could make a difference. I wanted to make people's quality of life within the Talbot, Cllr, Margam area where I was living, where I still live. I wanted their quality of life to be better.
I told my wife to go round in a bikini.
The reason I got into politics was mainly because to make a difference within the local community. With regards to Port Talbot wise, the average person is paying more council tax than Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire, which are larger areas and larger population size. So to get into politics was just basically to make a difference and to give the power back to the local people. Instead of having national governments telling people what to do, it should be the local people telling the government what to do and then the government doing that. So that's the reason I got involved.
So on the 3rd of May this year, we've got local government elections, and that will involve us where we'll be electing 64 members for the 42 electoral divisions within the county borough. The electorate of the county borough as well is currently just under 110,000 electors. At the moment, there are currently 5 political groups which make up the composition of the County Borough Council. The Labour group, which is the largest group, has 39 members. That's the opposition is then made up of the Plaid Cymru group, which has 11 members. The Independent Democrats, which have 9 members. Liberal Democrats, which have 3, and then the Neath Port Talbot Independent Party group, which have 2 members.
Well, fortunately I was elected in 1981. For the first 6 months I was in awe, but here I was at the county council and part of decision making at that level. And since that time in 1981, I stood for election. Now this will be my 9th time that I stood for election. I've held different positions over the years. When local government reorganisation came around in 1995, 96, I gave up my job then within British Gas, took early retirement, voluntary redundancy, to become a full-time councillor, because I felt it needed it at that time. I was 50 years of age then, and I'm right, now's the time to do it. And after speaking with my wife, we decided that's what would happen. That means putting my job on the line every 4 years. I was quite happy to do that. But I just felt it needed now. As an example, in the Tybark ward, there were 3 borough councillors and 1 county councillor, myself. So it's 4 councillors to do all the work. After 1995, there were only 2 councillors to do all the work. So there was this increase in workload. And that's what I decided to do. I wanted to do that.
Basically, at the moment, myself, I'm the Deputy Chairman, Membership and Finance of the local Conservative Association. So basically, in that role, it's my job to recruit new people, basically to control the finance of the association, and to basically be the director of the campaign. So anything which goes on within the campaign has to be approved, and it has to be within the budget. Previously, I've stood as the Assembly candidate, the National Assembly for Wales candidate in 2011 for the party in Aberystwyth, as one of the youngest candidates in Wales as well. So politically wise, I've had a bit of training within politics, but I'm still the new kid on the block. So as a result, I can bring the theories from within inside the party, but also theories from outside the party, and combine them to make sure basically the public get a politician who's accountable, but at the same time is approachable and hasn't been ruined by politics.
In 2001, I had the huge privilege to be the Mayor of Neath Port Talbot Council. And Denise, my wife, and myself just give ourselves to that job totally for a year. And we just had a wonderful time meeting people throughout Neath Port Talbot. I always knew what wonderful communities we got, special people. But that we attended over 900 different things during that year. The other thing then, of course, we were able to raise money for my charity, for our charity, the Special Needs Activity Club based in Tybark called SNAC. And we were able to raise £23,000 for that charity. And we were really delighted that the people had supported us in raising that money. So yeah, over the last 31 years, starting very much at the bottom, I now find myself in a position of cabinet member for education, lifelong learning and school improvement. And I've held that now since 2004. And it's the job I always wanted. It's the job I always aspired to. Even as a 34-year-old starting off, the chairman of education was always the focal point, to educate young people, to give them the opportunity, the chance to do whatever they want in life. It's so special, and I absolutely love the job. I mean, it's a real privilege and pleasure to be in this position.
So to qualify as a candidate at local government elections, in essence, the candidate must be a British citizen, citizen of Commonwealth or European Union, and be over the age of 18. They also have to satisfy, have some kind of connection with the local area, either being a local government elector or owning property or being a tenant living in the area. There are also various disqualifications as well, which are laid out in legislation and which have to be examined carefully before a candidate decides to put their name forward.
When I was growing up, I grew up inside the military. My father was serving at the time. And as a result, I moved around a lot, which allowed me to see different parts of the UK, as well as abroad, for example, France and Cyprus. But likewise, it caused issues as well, because you could see the importance of the army on one side, but on the opposite side, you had the understanding that the families of servicemen and women make a huge commitment to support them when they're off on tour. But also you see on the opposite side that the politicians and the government equally have an impact, because if they don't provide the funding or the support, then the armed forces can't do their jobs. As a result, it shaped me in the sense of, from a young age, into politics, because I understood that to make the army and the military better, you had to have politicians who understood it and actually care enough to actually improve funding and think to themselves what a serviceman or woman goes through, to deploy abroad. When we're fighting 2 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and possible more on the way, it's clearly obvious from growing up that the armed forces nowadays have to make more of a commitment than ever before. So it shaped me, because when I speak to party officials and when I'm on the campaign trail, and I bump into people who've served or currently serving, I can use my experiences to relate to them on a different level than an average person, because I understand what they've gone through and understand what their family's going through. As a result, when I speak about the armed forces, I'm not only speaking passionately about it, but I'm also bringing it onto my life experiences and my family. So I think that shaped me dramatically on that sense, because without the support of my family, growing up wise, it could have been more difficult than it was. So it's quite nice to have that sense of commitment and that discipline from an early age, which you only pick up in the military.
Born and bred in Port Talbot. Well, actually, I suppose I was born in Neath Hospital, but came to live in number 15 Holland Street in Port Talbot. My father was from Port Talbot. My mother was a Mice Day girl. So plenty of background there with my mother in the Cllr Valley and mining, and my father from Port Talbot in steelworks. They were lovely parents. I had a great childhood. I was brought up on Samfields Estate, firstly in a prefab in Warren Place, and then later on moving to Burns Road on the Little Warren. And it was a great place to live. I know perhaps some people think of Samfields and its reputation. It didn't have a reputation, not for me anyway, growing up there. It was brilliant, a brilliant place to live and to play. I went to Samfields School. I went to the infants, the juniors and the secondary modern, and then on to the grammar school when I was 13, which I didn't much like, and I'm glad now we've got a comprehensive education system. The main influence was my father. He was politically aware, but sadly with a lot of other people like him, he never did anything about it, and that's where I've differed. I wanted to make a change, and I've tried ever since. Next week, on the 23rd of March, we'll be celebrating our 44th wedding anniversary. We've now known each other 50 years. I met my wife Denise when she was 14, I was 15 at the youth club, and we've been together ever since, and we are very much alike as we were back then. We have a son, Andrew, who's 41, daughter Katie is 38, and we got three grandsons. Daniel 16, Alex 13, Joshua 13, and what I call an apprentice woman, a granddaughter, Sophie, she's 11, and we're very proud of them, and they're lovely grandchildren. When we first got married, we lived in a couple of rooms up in Cllr Street in Port Talbot, and then in 1970 we moved to Taibach and our first house, where we lived very happily there for 24 years, before moving to 6 Prince Street in Margam, where we've lived since 1994. We were very close as a family, and we rely on each other as a family unit to get through difficult times and the not so difficult times.
As long as it's not juice, no blood, because of the thing, I feel that I can taste. I know it sounds awful now, but you know what I mean. But all beautiful.
In terms of electoral stationery for elections, we do use a vast amount of paper. That can involve poll cards, ballot papers, postal votes, and sort of the various different documentation that's needed for candidates and the setting up the count and the verification.
Hello, electoral station, may I help you?
All stationery is designed and prepared locally here in the elections office, but we utilise guidance prepared by the Electoral Commission. And the stationery is then, once it's ready and it's set, it's sent to a specialist print bureau.
I was originally educated locally at the local comprehensive schools and then the local college. I went to university at Glamorgan, which is up in the Welsh Valleys, studying a mixture of law and forensics, which helped me because I could understand the need to put forward a good argument and a good debate. Work-wise, I've worked, locally in local stores when I was at university, and currently I work at the Welsh Assembly. As a result, I can see where Assembly members are coming along and coming through with ideas, but I can also see how it impacts the average person on the street. So from the experiences from growing up at local schools and not going to Eton or Oxford or Cambridge, you're not disillusioned by the fact that money can buy everything. You understand the need to work and the need to be educated well enough to actually go forward. So for me, my education was important, simply because of the fact of it allows you the ability to get a good grounding and to put forward a good argument, but at the same time also understand the need to work and the reasons to work, which makes me want to work and makes me want to give something back to the community. One of the reasons I run in this election is purely to give something back to the local community, which has asked for very little in return from its politicians. It's time we give something back to them, cut council tax, for example, so the people who have to work and want to work can and not have to worry about struggling to pay their bills at the end of the day.
worked in the gas industry all my working life, starting on the 23rd of September 1963 as an apprentice gas fitter for the old Wales Gas Board, and then doing a 5-year apprenticeship and coming out of my time in 1968. I was in the industry until 1996 when I took early retirement and voluntary redundancy to become a full-time councillor. During that time, I was always interested in the trade union movement, and from becoming a shop steward locally, I then became the branch chairman in Llandarcy, and ultimately via local committees and regional, I became the chairman of the Welsh committee, and ultimately the chairman nationally of the whole industry in British Gas Service, a position I really enjoyed, and that took me around the country.
We currently have 134 polling stations within the county borough area, scattered throughout the rural and urban areas. In terms of organising the stations, of course you must have staff, and so each polling station must have a presiding officer and a poll clerk. And then larger stations will have additional poll clerks appointed to them to assist with the issuing of ballot papers. In total, we'll have we'll have 134 presiding officers, but we'll also have around about 180 or so poll clerks who will be helping to run the election on the day and make sure that the poll is carried out under the rules and the guidance of the returning officer, who outlines how things are supposed to run. This is, of course, it's a gigantic exercise and requires a huge amount of planning and organisation to ensure that each of the polling stations is booked and is prepared, ready for election day, and that all the staff that are appointed to the stations are trained and are ready to undertake their duties. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Can I welcome you to today's poll clerk training session? My name is Rhys George, and I'm the elections manager for the local authority, and it's my job, along with the elections team, to organise and coordinate the forthcoming local government elections, which will take place, if you don't already know, on Thursday the 3rd of May. I appreciate that many of you have received training before, and it does feel like only yesterday that we were doing training for the Assembly elections and the AV referendum, as well as the Welsh referendum a little earlier in March last year. But as we always tell you, we do have a legal obligation to train you, and it's important that we refresh you and remind you of the requirements and your duties as poll clerks. It is essential that you act impartially at all times and are not perceived to be leading electors on how they should vote. So it's your duty to ensure that the secrecy of the ballot is adhered to at all times.
Myself personally, I consider myself to be more of a Cameron Conservative, so a New Age Conservative. With that, of course, we've got to protect the NHS and our troops on the ground in Afghanistan. But at the same time, we've also got to look at cutting the deficit, which is the hardest task at the moment. To be fair, centre-left politics is the key, really, to the future of politics within Britain. You've got to cut the deficit, but at the same time, you've got to be socially responsible. So therefore, you've got to talk to the people, and you've got to get them on side. So really, my ideological view of politics is, while you make the tough decisions, you've got to explain the tough decisions to the people. So at the same time, you've got to be on the safe side and speak to the public, get the public on side and find out what the public want, instead of just deciding this is what we want and this is what we're going to do.
my first involvement with politics was at home. My father took an interest in politics, so I used to listen to his point of view and what he had to say, and it rubbed off on me. And I think it rubbed off to the point where my father never did anything about it. And I thought, I'm not going to be like you. I'm going to do something about it. And my feelings with regards back in the 60s were things when I was in school, and then as a young man in work as a apprentice gas fitter. There were loads of things going on in the world, and it seemed that so much of the change was being driven by young people, whether it was in universities or through other things. And I saw the way that communism was working, and I didn't agree with that. But at the same time, I saw the greed on the other side, and I didn't agree with that as well. So I felt that my politics as a socialist, in trying to help others, and slightly to the left, was the right way to go. Because if we can't look after each other, then who's going to do it for us?
Voters that are comfortable with a voting experience are usually far more likely to participate regularly, and we do of course want to encourage this wherever possible. So always keep customer service at the very forefront of your mind. And an elector having a positive experience and an enjoyable experience of voting is far more likely to vote again and again and again. And that's what we really want, especially younger voters who may be voting for the first time. If you can make it an enjoyable experience and not a sort of an ordeal, then that's what we really want to encourage. Because voter turnout in the UK is around about 40 to 45% at the moment and declining. And it's our duty to try and encourage people to vote wherever possible. And you are the front line of the democratic process.
From when election time comes around, and this will be my 9th election, then things really start to kick in. I got to think back over the last 4 or 5 years and what I've been doing, and then make sure that people appreciate when I'm knocking their door or leafleting and talking to them on the street or in the supermarket or anywhere what's gone on over the last 4 years, and to make sure they come out and support us. Now, after standing so many times, the emotion of it never ever changes. The day, I've always said, the day that I stop getting excited, getting frightened, because it's a different thing. It's not frightened in the way that you're fearful, but you get a knot in the stomach, and you get all the anxiety. And that goes back to the first time I stood, and at the count, I was sat there looking at these votes mounting up, and I said to my wife, "Oh, look, I've had it, I've lost. Look how many the other guys got." And she said to me, "No, those are yours, not his." And when it was over and my majority was 650, I was just absolutely over the moon. I mean, the relief, the fact that I had won, the fact that I'd been elected as a councillor, and people had been true to their word. They'd supported me. Now I had to repay that over the next 4 years, and that's what you do. People put their trust in you to represent their views, and that's everyone in the ward, not just the people that have voted for you, the people that haven't voted for you, or the people who haven't gone out to vote.
On the campaign trail, it's a strange emotion of ups and downs. It's like a roller coaster. You have campaign strategy meetings where you speak to your party, speak to your supporters, and basically set out the strategy for the campaign. So what you're going to deliver, who you're going to deliver to, who you're going to speak to, and what's the message. At the same time, you're answering emails and telephones from your constituents. But at the same time, you're worried about the election result on election night, but at the same time, you're more worried about what's coming up the next day in the press, or what the people are saying about you, and what people are thinking. To be fair, on the campaign trail, all the team is focused on one point, and that's getting the message across. So what is the message of the day, what is the message of the week, and what is the message of the month, or the election? I.e., what do I want to get across now, what do I want to get across tomorrow, and what do I want the people to remember? We have so many policies for the election, for example, freezing council tax, but the public don't remember them all, they only remember one. So mainly on the campaign trail, it's all the emotions which go with it, but it's trying to remember the one single policy, i.e. what do we want the public to remember us by, and what do we want the public to take to the ballot box. And that causes stress at times, because people have different ways of getting that message across. For example, would it be better across in person, in an email, over social media, for example, Facebook, Twitter, or in a leaflet or face-to-face? So you have stress from that. You also have the cost of it, and likewise you have the issues of, if I do this, what is the other constituents, other candidates doing, which will counteract that? So in all, it's an emotional roller coaster of ups and downs.
On polling day, you must be absolutely certain of who is entitled to vote. There is no room for error. If an elector is given a ballot paper they are not entitled to, this could potentially lead to an election petition. And the returning officer has asked me to inform you that if any instances are detected whereby ineligible electors are issued with a ballot paper, or eligible electors are not issued with a ballot paper, then the member of polling station staff responsible for such an area will not be appointed for any future duties. We are really, really strict on this. Because the implications are quite serious. And if you can imagine, particularly at local government elections, the difference between who is elected and who is not elected could be 1, 2 or 3 votes. It could be that, the margin of victory could be that small. And if there are even one or a small number of ballots which are issued incorrectly, that could be the difference between somebody being elected and not elected. And the repercussions for that could be enormous. So we have to be really careful about eligibility.
But the emotion of it all is, it does get to you. And if it doesn't get to you, then you shouldn't be in it. Because if you can't get emotional about something like that, not only about the election and how you knock doors on the night of the count, but then I remember my first 4 years, although it's 30 years ago now, very well in learning how to deal with problems, and then go into offices and say, look, this lady or this gentleman has a problem, can you sort it out? And that excitement of doing that. And I had to learn who the officers were. I had to learn where they were, what their telephone numbers. So my wife Denise used to quiz me of an evening. Who's the director of this, or who's the highways man, or the social services person? And that way you would learn, But again, the winning feeling is good. Thankfully, I haven't lost yet, and I don't intend to. And that's in my hands and nobody else's hands. So.
The cost of life in politics is different for everybody. You constantly are going to meetings or answering your phone, likewise constantly on social media, checking polling figures. For example, what are the national and local polling figures? Who's got the majority, who's going to have the minority? But it's also a case of the stress on your family is ridiculous, because your family are constantly supporting you, but at the same time they don't see you because you're away for 12 hours, 24 hours sometimes, out and about in the constituents. Also, sometimes you're also away in conferences at, for example, in our case, Conservative Campaign HQ in Cardiff or in Millbank, or speaking to campaign directors, or speaking to the press. So you're never always there. Also, you've got to liaise with your team constantly. Likewise, with politics, you've always got to remember what is happening nationally and locally. Because if you do something locally, is that counteracting what your party is trying to do nationally? So it's a case of life in politics is different because you're trying to balance everything. It's a constant balancing act, a bit like a juggler at a circus. If you throw one thing up in the air, you've got to catch the other thing, which may fall down. But all above all, life in politics is great if you're interested in democratic process, if you're interested in putting the public first and ensuring that if you come to a candidate with an issue, we deliver on that issue, and likewise, whatever happens, we always make sure your issue comes number one and we answer it. You may not always like the answer, but we will give you an answer and work with the public to see if we can actually fix your issue.
Family-wise, that's an easy one. I've never done this job on my own. There's always been my wife Denise, my son Andrew, and my daughter Kate. They've always been there to support me. Even when they've left home and gone married, they've always been there. Without them, and I do get a bit emotional at this, you just can't do it on your own. If anybody says they do think again. Being a councillor, if you're committed, is very much a family affair, through the ups and the downs. And it's great when you're up there, you can celebrate with them, and when you're down, they're the ones that are there, can pick you up and say, look, come on, carry on, you're doing okay, or whatever, and really stimulate you for the next. And that's basically been the last 31 years. I mean, it's just, I've really enjoyed, and I look forward to this election, and I hope that people that I've served over the last 31 years will put their faith and trust in me again for the next 5 years. Because you never know what's around the corner. You never know what problems people have, and how some you can solve quite easily, some are very difficult and complex. But it's always a challenge. Life's a challenge, and I enjoy a challenge.
The count process itself, that is of course the apex of the election, and it's the event that we've been preparing for months. A normal election process takes around about 3 or 4 months to prepare properly, and out of that time, a huge amount of my time, most of my time is spent on thinking and organising how the count process should proceed. The actual process itself can be broken down quite straightforwardly into 2 phases. The first phase is we call the verification process, where all ballot boxes will be brought to a central location for that particular area, and those each ballot box will be given to a team of counting assistants who will check the number of ballot papers matches the ballot paper count brought to the count by the presiding officer for that polling station. And that will be done for each ballot box brought to the count venue. Once that stage is complete, we then proceed to phase 2 of the count proper itself, where we'll be actually counting the ballot papers and recording the number of votes for each candidate. And that is very straightforward. It usually just means where you simply have numbers of votes for each candidate, and if there's a multi-member ward, you would use a matrix system to be able to record the votes for more than 2 or 3 member seats where necessary. And then once that's done and we've double-checked the results and spoken to the candidates to make sure that they are happy and they don't want any recounts, we then proceed, the returning officer or the deputy returning officer appointed will proceed to publicly announce the results.
Well, election night, is always a stressful event. It's one of those where I'm quite nervous, but at the same time slightly tired. Been up since 7 this morning, which is slightly late than normal on election night. And normally on election day you're up 5, 6, knocking on doors, getting out votes early on. Today pretty much has been getting out the vote, so knocking on doors, making sure the Conservatives vote. It's also been down to us headquarters in Cardiff, ringing up people and just speaking to them, basically asking them to come out and vote for Conservative. In Neath Port Talbot, our main target wards are Baglan and Margam. Predictions before the start of tonight were that they're going to be quite good. Looking at the results coming in, and we're more nervous now because we're not 100% sure, but only time will tell.
Well, now I've seen the verification of the votes, I feel a lot better. I'm always nervous at this time. Nothing's taken for granted, and we just see, what the count, what happens in the count, and all the emotions, nervous, apprehensive, and then when we finish, we see what's what.
Trying to get all these.
Okay, wider party target-wise, for example, Margam and Baglan, we were expecting high hopes, high turnout, high number of votes for Conservatives. The areas look good for Conservative voters. However, only time will tell tonight on whether or not we manage to secure Baglan and Margam. At the end of the day, we're not gonna stand here and predict the outcome to the election before the results are in. We can only hope that's going to be the case. But the entire team have put up 100% in this election. We've fought hard and we've fought long, and only time will tell whether or not we can actually get it. But at the end of the day, myself and my colleagues throughout the Conservative Party have tried hard. We've listened to people's views and we've taken them on board, and we've put through policies and ideas and suggestions which hopefully, even if we don't get elected, will still get put forward and still benefit the towns that we represent.
Well, today's been a busy day, obviously. Like the last 3 weeks have been busy, but it's today you're almost running on empty, but you're running on adrenaline. It's been a long day. We've been out visiting the polling booths. We've been out on the tannoy urging people to vote, and now at the count we start to relax a little bit, but it's still the air is full of tension around here, and we just wait and see what the result is, and then I can relax, hopefully. With regards to the way that the party has run the campaign, we put a lot of effort. It's probably the best team of candidates that I've been involved with for the last 31 years. And genuine people who genuinely want to make people's quality of life better. But when you say that, when you in wards where they've got councillors who've been there for a number of years, they're very difficult to shift. And I think in some wards we're going to be up against it. But overall, I think it'll be a good night for the party in Port Talbot.
In terms of the actual cost of elections, it has to be borne in mind that all elections are, and democracy itself is expensive, because you're dealing with hundreds of people, you're dealing with hundreds of polling stations, and sort of large-scale logistics and huge volumes of electoral stationery printing, as we've discussed. Approximately, I probably assess the cost for the 2012 local government elections for our local authority as being around £175,000, but that is a very rough estimate, and it all depends on the number of contested seats.
With regards to local politics, I learned very early on, that what would be considered the small things, like outside my house there's a cracked paving stone. Now in the terms of how we provide social services and home care, that's a very small thing, but it's also a really important thing to people locally. So you've got to deal with all those matters on a wide spectrum, from the broken paving stone, or the public light, or the light outside in the street is not working, or the refuse haven't been picked up, to then educating our children, making sure our elderly and infirm are looked after. And coming back to local politics, I've seen it over the years. Although I belong to the Labour Party and on Neath Port Talbot County Borough Council, I'm part of the Labour group. If you're in a meeting, then 95% of the time, or any meeting, you go with a common sense approach. And for 95%, you don't have to use politics at all. It's that about 5% I've always found, where perhaps we in the Labour group think one way, and other political parties think another. And that's up to them to use that argument. So yeah, it's different to national and regional politics, but it's vitally important, because without this, people in our communities wouldn't have champions to put their points of view for, and to all the little bits, the potholes, the refuse and so on. If we weren't there to do that, nobody else would be able to do it for us.
Politics at a local level is a lot different from a national level, purely because on the local level, you've got to be more interactive. You've got a smaller area to look at instead of a wider constituency. You've got individual wards, so it's less people, but at the same time there's more pressure, because you've got to get the people on side very quickly, and you've got to make sure the public know that you're out there, but at the same time you've got to listen to them, Whereas on a national level, you could focus on one particular group in a constituency. At a local level, if you focus just on one group and not everyone else, then what you notice is that one group will come out to vote, but the rest of them will be disenfranchised. As a result, you've got an issue there of, okay, I've just ignored 2/3 of the constituency because this issue, whatever it be, speed bumps, council tax, etc., it only affects a third. Well, this third now may vote for me, but the 2/3 won't, because I haven't listened to them. So you've got to listen to them all at once. There's a great pressure on you, whereas at national level, you have time on the campaign trail to deal with one issue at a time instead of them all at once. Hobby-wise, when I'm not involved in politics, which takes up quite a lot of time, I like to spend time with my family because on the campaign, of course, they don't see you as often as they would like because you're constantly taking phone calls, emails, in meetings, etc. But I also like to play squash, and I'm quite a big squash fan, to be fair. So that takes up quite a lot of my time. It gives me an excuse to keep fit and keep active. But at the same time, it also allows me to connect, and get back involved with my friends. So we invite them down, play some squash, which I originally got involved in when I was at university. So between my family and playing squash, apart from that, it's just general relaxing. So you catch up on Facebook and all the young networks which are coming out on the internet now. But likewise, at the same time, it's just about downtime, relaxing. Not having to worry about meetings, not having to worry about going out and meeting the public. It's the difference time. On the campaign trail, you hardly get that. So when you do get a chance to do it, you make sure every second counts, and you just make sure you're fully relaxed, because if you constantly are out there meeting people, your batteries are going to wear down, and sooner or later you're just going to crash out. So for me, family being main importance, because if the family are happy, then you of course have done a good job. So the last thing you want to do is your support network, your family, to hate you for running in a campaign. It's just not possible and acceptable, to be fair. So family and squash are my main two relaxations during off time during the campaign.
Well, here we are at the what I call my little spot, and this is the main Swansea to Paddington line, and behind me is the knuckle yard. So it's a very busy place. You get the steel comes out of the steelworks into this yard, and then it goes all over the country, and all different trains come in during a 24-hour period. And the trains, the railways are my hobbies, and has been my hobby all my life. Apparently, as a little boy in a pram, my mother used to take me to the old Dyffryn Yard engine shed in Taibach, where I would sit contentedly and watch the trains until it was time to go home. Then I'd bawl my head off because she was taking me home. And it's always been my hobby. And now, after a lifetime of watching, I've got many hundreds of magazines and books and DVDs, etc. And even now, I really enjoy watching trains and experiencing what they're all about.
Well, tonight's result was interesting. We were expecting a Conservative turnout in Margam and Baglan. Labour, of course, have taken pretty much every seat here at Neath Port Talbot Council. But then it seems to be the same across the country. So it seems somehow Labour have managed to connect with the voters. So there are lessons to be learnt. But the teams have put up a very good campaign. We've been out and about speaking to the constituents. We've done as much as we could, and the public have voted. Yes, we didn't get elected, but then we will live to fight another day. So all I can do is thank my team, thank my colleagues, and thank everyone else for their help during this campaign.
Anybody left?
Well, he's left.
Well, I'm playing up, guy. Well done. Great mark. Well, thank you. There you go. Well, I mean, it's over. I'm got all the emotions of being delighted, not only for myself, but my colleague Anthony Taylor in the Tybark ward, where we won convincingly, but throughout Port Talbot, where we've really delivered, and we've blown people away because of our teamwork, the policies that we've come out with, the commitment we've come out with to the community, and the community has believed in us. Now it's up to us in the next 5 years to deliver this. And I'd just like to thank the people of Cllr, Tybark and Margam for supporting me yet again. This will be the 9th election I fought, the 9th I've won with their support. I got another 5 years to prove myself. I'm still as enthusiastic as I was 31 years ago. And also with the support of my wife Denise and my children, Andrew and Kate, and the whole family have been behind me in that time, then I can't fail as a councillor when you got that type of support.
Okay, no one talks. I said, verlieren wir uns.